We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report on the phone. It is a pleasure to welcome back to the program Representative Alan Grayson. He is on the floor of the House. Congressman, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Sam. I'm glad I'm not alone here. There's a lot of Democrats who are still here trying to get the Republicans to enact common sense laws that can protect us from the scourge of assault weapons and other guns.
All right, so give us. I mean, can you give us just a brief description of what's going on there now? Are people? I mean, is it just Democrats in there? Who's literally in the chambers?
It's just Democrats. We had two series of votes late last night, one around 11:30 and the other one around 2:30, and the Republicans trooped in and outvoted us during those two brief periods. But ever since yesterday morning, apart from that and a couple of casual Republican observers who stopped by just to watch, not to join, it's been Democrats. And right now, looking at it, I count around a dozen Democrats who are here right now with me.
And what are you? I mean, what is it specifically that the Democrats are seeking? I mean, is it specifically votes on those two bills, or what?
We're seeking a safer America. You know, I represent Orlando, the site of the biggest, most terrible mass shooting in the history of the United States. And I can tell you that what people in Orlando want is they want personal safety. It's just too easy to kill too many people too quickly. In Orlando, what happened was one person of ordinary skill, using one terrible weapon, was able to kill almost 50 people in a matter of minutes. And that just shouldn't be possible. No one should have that kind of ability to wreak that kind of carnage. No one. And the weapon that he used was the same weapon that was used to kill 26-year-olds in Sandy Hook a couple of years ago. So we keep seeing this happen over and over and over again. The Republicans won't do anything about it. They had two proposals that came up for a vote in the Senate, one of which is supported by 87% of the public. The other one is supported by 94% of the public. The Republicans voted those down 52-2 and 53-1. So we're in a situation where a small group of people who run an organization called the NRA are basically popular will thwarting democracy itself. And the Democrats are here to try to change that.
I think the at least on the left and across the spectrum, the idea of expanded background checks is not terribly controversial amongst non-Republican lawmakers, frankly. But the idea of using the terror watch list or the no-fly list as a mechanism. In this case, to basically provide some measure of reasonable gun control. A lot of people take issue with that, and you're certainly known for your protection of civil liberties. Give me your perspective on that. I mean, what do you make of that? What's your position on codifying further a mechanism that has really no accountability?
I wouldn't go that far to say it has no accountability, but let me tell you honestly how I feel about it. And I've wrestled with it because I understand what you're talking about. Let's say we get it wrong. Let's say that by putting somebody on the no-fly list and the no-buy list, meaning not only can they not fly, but they also can't buy a gun. Let's say we get it wrong, and we should have actually allowed that person to buy a gun. That's clearly a mistake. The kind of mistake that happens often in life. I went through secondary screening 14 times in a row after 9/11. So I wasn't happy about that, but I bore it well. I didn't cause any trouble over it. Eventually they realized I wasn't a terrorist threat. And, the situation in that case, which scientists call a false positive, means that somebody can't buy a gun. Okay, so what does that mean? They can't go to a firing range unless they rent a weapon at the firing range. They can't go hunting. Okay, that's really not the same as, let's say, denying somebody the right to vote, denying somebody food stamps, denying somebody veterans benefits. Stuff's not the same. It's just basically saying that person mistakenly can't get a gun. Now, let's look at the other situation, which is called a false negative among scientists. Let's say that we accidentally allow somebody to get a gun when they shouldn't have a gun. And by the way, hundreds of people on the no-fly list have bought guns, and also on the watch list have bought guns. Hundreds of them. Okay? Now, what's the worst that can happen there? Actually, we know that answer. 49 dead. So when you weigh the pros and cons, you realize that although we should do the best we can in respecting people's civil liberties, in allowing people to have the things that they're allowed to have like other citizens, and refraining from discrimination, we should do the best we can. We shouldn't say we're not going to regulate. We're just going to give up the entire effort of trying to distinguish the innocent from the guilty, the dangerous from the not dangerous, simply because we might occasionally get it wrong.
You know, listen, I mean, I think that, there's a lot of people, and myself included, feel like, I don't care if everybody mistakenly doesn't have the right to buy a gun. I think that would make a much better society. But the other aspect of that is that you are, regardless of beneficial outcomes, in this instance, you are then expanding the use of a terror watch list, which could theoretically be in the hands of Donald Trump in next January. And he could say, just as we've done with guns here, we're going to expand it to a whole series of other things, that we're going to use it as, if you fall on this list, you can't do X, Y, or Z. I mean, that seems to me to be the biggest issue with this. And then I want you to talk about the political value to it, because I understand that as well.
Well, I've looked into this, and I'll tell you that my understanding of this may be a little different from other people's. My understanding, and I've talked to the FBI over and over and over again about this since a week ago last Sunday when the shooting in Orlando occurred, is that the way this actually works is something that has been discussed in court. There has been litigation over it. And there's a standard called the reasonable suspicion standard. You can't get on the watch list, and you can't stay on the watch list unless you meet the reasonable suspicion standard. It's like the probable cause standard. It's like, in a different sense, the beyond a reasonable doubt standard. It's like the clear and convincing standard. It's a legal standard. And there are certain ways that you can get on that list because of reasonable suspicion, and certain ways you cannot get on that list. So it's not somebody like Donald Trump or some other political figure making arbitrary decisions based upon whim or malice. It's actually a legal process that takes place. It's done by FBI agents. It's not done by prosecutors. But it's a legal process that takes place. They get an enormous amount of guidance about this, and they are actually personally punished when they get it wrong.
How do you get off that list, though?
Well, first of all, a lot of people on the list don't know they're on the list. The only way you know you're on the list of the no-fly list is if you try to fly.
Right.
So there is that. But if you find that, if you go to the airport and you find that you can't fly, as far as I know, you are informed of why. You may not be informed immediately of why, but you're informed reasonably quickly that you're on the no-fly list, and then, of course, you can take the matter to court.
Okay. I mean, that seems fairly onerous to me, and it may not be that you can put anybody on there, but we know there's about 800,000 plus people on there, and it seems unlikely to me that we have that many terrorists or potential terrorists. But so talk to me just briefly.
Well, wait. I mean, first of all, you have to distinguish between American citizens and people who are foreigners who are on the list. Okay. Secondly, you have to distinguish between the no-fly list and the watch list. The watch list, there's actually a series of watch lists. There's several different flavors of the watch list. And it depends upon the kind of threat that you represent. A small number of people are actually on 24-hour surveillance. They're watched all the time. That's their watch list. They're watched. And then there's a sliding scale of the kind of effort that gets put in, depending upon the threat that you represent. Let's face it, Sam, if this were a real problem, you'd be hearing about it. Okay, if there were a real problem that ordinary citizens who represent no threat were arbitrarily be putting on the no-fly list, we'd be hearing about it. Instead, what we're seeing is that hundreds of people who are on the watch list, who are on the no-fly list, end up buying weapons and then occasionally using them.
Okay. Well, I mean, look, I don't want to get too bogged down in this. I mean, I heard about it when Ted Kennedy was on the no-fly list, but you tend not to hear. Right, exactly. I mean, but he was senator, so you expect a little more publicity for that. But all right, let me ask you this: give me a sense of the political pressure that you think the Republicans are feeling over this.
I think they're feeling a lot of pressure, and I think it's more moral than political. I think that their own consciences have been tweaked. Apparently, the Senate Republicans have a very weak conscience in general, because they voted in one case 52-2, and in the other case 53-1 against common sense gun regulations that are supported by 90% of the public. But I think that the ones in the House, who I spend a lot of time with, are starting to definitely feel uncomfortable because they took an oath. And if they're starting to feel that their actions are inconsistent with their oath, they're not actually doing what they need to do to protect America. And they talk all the time about that. That's a big deal to them. How are we going to protect America? How are we going to make sure that we're safe? And what they're starting to realize is that they're just not doing their job. And I think that is starting to wear them down a bit. I don't know if it's going to reach the point where they'll actually do anything useful about it. I think politically it's a very difficult situation for them. All of them, well, I shouldn't say all of them, the great majority of them have heavily gerrymandered districts where the only election they have to worry about is the primary. The NRA has extreme iron control over most Republican primaries. So it's whatever their personal beliefs may be, they realize that they're putting their political future at risk if they actually do the right thing here. And that's the reality of the situation. But in terms of, look, we shut this place down yesterday. They had a whole bunch of nonsense they had lined up for us to do that had nothing to do with guns or, for that matter, anything to do with their own, except with their own political agendas. We shut it down. They could barely get any votes out of the place yesterday, and they had to wait until close to midnight to even start. And we essentially ruined their plans to get anything done today as well. Plus, if they had any idea that they were going to get anything done next week, when we were supposed to be in recess, we blew that up as well. So there's a lot of practical pressure at this point. They don't know what's going to happen when we come back after July 4th. They don't know what's going to happen with public opinion between now and then. It's obvious to everybody that the public is with us. Over time, it's going to be obvious to everybody that the public is against them. And you're hearing things coming out of Democratic mouths I haven't heard for a long time.
Yeah.
People are starting to suggest, sort of in half steps, that what's happening here is that through their actions, the Republicans are actually making us unsafe, that they're actually giving the terrorists aid and comfort. And it's a fact that, there's a memo on this. The fact that it's appalling, but it's a fact that terrorists are told, don't even bother trying to smuggle weapons to the United States. You can get all the weapons you need right there. Until a few months ago, you could walk into any Walmart and buy an assault weapon. And then Walmart put its own assault weapons ban into place. Unfortunately, the rest of America is still waiting for that.
Right. Now, is there any concern that Republicans will now become obstructionist after these tactics?
I think that ship has sailed. It's really funny now that you mention it. I don't know if you read Marco Rubio's announcement that he's running against me for the U.S. Senate seat in Florida. He announced yesterday that he's jumping back in the race after saying, literally, according to him, 10,000 times that he's going to be in January. I guess it only counts if you say it 10,001 times and don't have your fingers crossed behind your back. But Marco Rubio's this announcement says what he really wants to do as a U.S. Senator is he wants to obstruct. He actually said that. He said he's done a great job of doing that with President Obama in charge. And if we elect a Democrat to continue in the White House, that's what he really wants to do. It's nothing but obstruction. It's nothing but nihilism. And there it is, naked for the world to see, from the man who came in third and running for the Republican presidential nomination.
Now, just lastly, how long do you plan to stay there? I got to say, you sound like you're getting a little tired. How long do you guys plan to stay there?
We're making that decision collectively. This is not freelancing by anybody. We meet every few hours. We judge the situation, and then we decide as a group exactly what we're planning to do. So I won't be the one making that decision. This is a good case of us, not me.
Representative Grayson, thank you so much for calling in. And, I think, some people may have a little bit of an issue with this whole Terror Watch thing, but I think clearly it is, you folks have been expressing the frustration of the vast majority of Americans. And hopefully this will get some movement on the Republican side.
Just bear in mind that for the first 2 centuries of the United States, there was no personal right to a gun. And then the Heller decision, which I invite people to read, I read it, said that some people, not everybody, but some people have the right to a gun in their own homes. That's all it says. It doesn't say that everybody has the right to a gun. It doesn't say that you can choose any kind of gun you want, or a tank, or a nuclear weapon, or a chemical weapon, or anything like that. It doesn't say that you can use it anywhere but in your own home. So this notion that we're somehow intruding on people's fundamental rights, what it does is it equates falsely the idea that there is a right to a weapon, a personal weapon, and equates that with the right to freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom to be free from discrimination by the government, equal protection under the law, and all the rights that actually deeply, deeply matter to all of us.
Representative Alan Grayson from the floor of the House, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, too. Bye.
Hello, you. I'm Sam Seder. Looking for smart progressive talk that is occasionally amusing? Well, subscribe to our YouTube feed. Subscribe to our podcast. Like us on Facebook. And just generally enjoy us.